I would like to talk about something I haven't written much about, and I haven't even spoken much about it in the past. It's innate in everybody. Before I tell you what it is that we'll expound on today, I'd like to tell you, just remind you how each one of us in this room was actually born. Millions of sperms compete for existence. Millions, countless. Out of those millions, one gets the chance. That one sperm clings to the wall of the uterus, and over time gains momentum, sheer force of energy, a tiny wave particle becomes a physical substance. As it grows, it's attached to a cord in the mother's womb, totally connected with the mother. When that baby is born, that baby is given a name. Everybody who's born is given some name. And that starts to become the identity of that individual. If the baby is called Ash, you'll say, Ash, come up, get up. All these instructions you will give, and Ash will respond to those instructions. Earlier, Ash wasn't aware that Ash was his or her name, or that was their identity. But now, that is how they respond. Even in a crowd, when they are not listening, when they are focused on something else, somebody yells that name from the back, in the background, and Ash will hear it. Ash will respond to it. And Ash, as they're growing up, are always constantly compared to somebody else. Ash, look at this child, look at that child, look at this son, look at this person's daughter. Look at how they are studying, look at how they keep themselves, look at how they groom themselves, look where you are. So Ash starts to believe that the only way to live is to win or lose. That I can either be on this side of the fence or on that side of the fence. That somehow I must compete. Somehow I must win. But nature, universe, God, the divine, the cosmic mother, mother divine, it's not about winning or losing. But because of this upbringing, something that was the basis of human existence becomes prominent in that person. I hope you have some idea what I'm referring to. Ego. Ego thinks my way is the only way. Ego thinks I must win or lose. In fact, that is why it's so hard to surrender. Because when you surrender, the other person is going to break your ego, and that can hurt sometimes. The basis of any ego, the basis of human existence, is the need for attention. Ego is nothing but the need for attention. If you really, uncover it, look through the layers, even if you're a child, when you haven't even learned to speak, if you want something, you just have to get the mother's attention or the father's attention. If you cry, you get their attention. If you laugh, maybe you get their attention, but you get it quicker if you're crying. So we learn to cry all the time, Maybe we'll get universe's attention, maybe we'll get God's attention, maybe we'll get other person's attention. This builds the habit of always cribbing and cringing and being grumpy and cranky. Unnecessarily, most of the time. There was a woman in a village. For years, she saved money. And she had a little bit of jewelry, and she loved gold. And one day she went to the town, went to a jeweler, gave away all her jewelry, all her savings, and in return got two really beautiful looking bangles of gold, heavy duty stuff. So now she came back, she was certain that everybody in the village will look at the bangles and say, wow, this is attention. We are making ourselves look good so that the others can say, you look good, as if it's going to make a difference to you. So she was wearing bangles, but nobody noticed. And she thought, that's crazy. I've spent my 10 years of savings on this thing, and nobody's even taking a note. This can't be right. So she went to her neighbor's house. She said, I couldn't sleep last night. She said, why? She said, I had this dream. I was, wearing these beautiful bangles. But the neighbor still didn't get it. Or maybe she chose to ignore it. So she saw that her efforts are failing. She's trying to talk, she's trying to get attention. So people look at her wrists and say, wow, you've got beautiful bangles there. But no, nobody's looking there. People will only look where they're interested, right? So nobody's looking there. And she's starting to feel, worthless. Somehow we have been brought up to believe that somebody else must approve of us. And that gives ego the wrong boost. That somehow somebody else should tell us that you are good. So if I've got an A grade in school, that means I'm doing well academically. If I don't have an A, that means I'm not doing well. But is that the truth? If my stock price is going up, that means my company is doing fine. If it's not going up, that means my company is not doing fine. But really, that's somebody else's endorsement of your performance, of you more than anything else. So this woman then goes to another neighbor with a bowl, says, can I have some sugar, please? And she extends her arm, thinking, now somebody will look. And nobody looks. Now she's flustered. She's thinking, I have to do something so people at least give me one compliment that, you're wearing nice bangles. She comes home, she waits for the evening to set in, and she gets ready, she gets dressed, and she puts on her bangles again. She comes out of the house and goes close to the house and burns the house down. Now this was made of grass and thatched huts, and so burning the house wouldn't take long. As the house started to burn, obviously all the villagers gathered. She said, please, somebody look, my house is burning. And she's raising her wrists, raising her arms, so somebody looks at her arms and say, well, you're wearing beautiful bangles. But people are worried about the house. So nobody looks at her bangles. Nobody says a thing. She's without a house the next day. This story sounds extreme, but it's not really extreme. If you examine the lives of most people around you, they're happy to take loans out. They're happy to have a big mortgage. They're happy to have, pay big installments every month, so they can have something that the world will say looks pretty good. And this is ego. The best way to understand this is, the best way to realize this is, when you are forced into doing something that really you wouldn't do otherwise. At that time you have to ask yourself, who's actually feeling good in me? When I take this step, the world may say, wow, you're fabulous. Who's feeling good? The part that's feeling good, that is ego. Ego says, you should only look at me. Love says, well, I'm happy to look at you too. Ego is the opposite of love. The opposite of love is not hatred. As an emotion, the opposite of love may be indifference. But the opposite of love is ego. Because you can't be in ego if you're in love. And if you are not in love, all you'll have is ego. Even if you are in love with just yourself, that's just as divine. But most people love even themselves conditionally. Even on themselves, they're so hard that I don't like these things about me, I like these things about me. What if you could just accept the way you are? Because this leads me to the second point. Ego is always dormant in everybody, but it only raises its hood in resistance. When there is criticism, when there is opposition, when somebody is against you, when somebody doesn't agree with you, at that time you think, wow, they're opposing me. When you feel bad because somebody does not agree with you, at that time you have to realize that this is nothing but ego talking. When everybody agrees with you, there is no problem really. If I put two rubber bands next to each other and ask you which one is stronger, you can't tell by looking at it. They look identical. But it's only when they're stretched and one snaps and the other one doesn't, we say the one that hasn't snapped is stronger. So when everything is going fine, there is really no ego. You're just feeling good, all's well. It's when things go against you, when plans go haywire and you snap, that's when we know that ego has won. Because ego only knows winning or losing. It doesn't know anything in between. Love says, oh, you could be right, I could be right, let's agree to disagree. But ego says, no, I'm only right. When I say it, it's right. And this is the basis of most of human suffering. It's not desire really, think about it. It's actually not really possible to be free of desires completely. You'll always, to pursue what matters to you keeps you busy. It's really the ego that breaks you, that hurts you, that pains you, that makes you grief, that gives you grief. Nothing more. There was a young salesperson, and he was trying to make a sale. So he was dealing with his client for 9 months. Eventually, the client, the prospect, doesn't choose him. He goes for somebody else. The young salesperson is really disappointed. He goes back to his boss and says, well, this just goes to show, you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. And his boss said, well, son, let me give you a piece of advice. Your job is not to make horse drink the water. That's not your job. Your job is to make the horse thirsty. If you make the horse thirsty, the horse will drink the water on its own. Most of us want to make the horse drink the water. We want the other person to accept us, recognize us, love us, appreciate us, compliment us, complete us. But it doesn't work that way. It has never worked that way. It's not going to change anytime soon. I don't see that. If you really want it, first thing is you have to love yourself. When you love yourself, when you accept yourself, you will become so beautiful that others will start to see your beauty. You already are beautiful, but you are not seeing that. So how can the other person see that? An example I give very frequently, there was, if you look at going into solitude, if you were to park yourself in a room for a day and turn off your laptop, no books, no TV, no Facebook, no internet, no phone, can you spend that time with yourself? One day, 8 hours, let's say. Can you spend 8 hours with yourself without feeling bored? If no, then don't you think it's too much to ask for that the other person should spend 8 hours with you without feeling bored? You can't spend time with yourself, and you're expecting the other person to spend time with you. I think it's being unrealistic. So the best way to channelize ego, the most easiest way, in fact, because once you channelize it, once you learn how to harness it, then you will discover its explosive energy. You will realize the power of your existence. Because ego is the only factor that makes you believe who you are or who you are not. This is the only limiting factor. If I take a glass, empty glass, it's got air, and there's air in this room. If I break the glass, the air in the glass will merge with the air in the room. So something that was confined to the glass only will suddenly magnify, multiply, build, increase, manifold. And that's what your existence is about. You're in a body, but somehow we have started identifying ourselves with the body. That I am so and so, I am the CEO, I am the director, or I'm a husband, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a son, I'm this, I'm that. But are you really? You have all these roles to perform, but you are not really these things. Ego is a curtain. It makes you blind. You may have the finest eyesight, the perfect vision, but if there's a curtain drawn in front of you, you can't really see it through, can you? And that's ego. Ego thinks, I am seeing, but I'm seeing a black cloth. I'm seeing a curtain, but ego thinks, I see it. Sometimes you accept something to be true. You form a belief that something you believe in is the truth. So much so that sometimes when truth in its full glory manifested comes and knocks on your door, you still don't open the door for it. Because you're so sure that you already know the truth. And this is pretty much what ego is. Ego thinks, I have it figured out. And even if I don't, I'm going to pretend I have it this way. It makes you blind. You can't see the truth. Sometimes, most of the times in relationships, I've seen that the other person is trying hard to change. And they are bringing small changes in them. But because of your ego, you don't see it. Or because of their ego, they don't see the change in you. They want you to become night from day, from white to dark. They want you to do the complete flip in a jiffy. But nothing happens in an instant. Everything builds up, everything takes time. When you think I had told this to this person, to my wife, to my husband, to my boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, whoever, and they're not doing it, look again, maybe they are doing it. One step at a time. But we want it in an instant. We want it to just happen like we just said it, and it should happen almost instantly. But everything that is steady in life takes time.